So, how does this quest, how does the Gates of Lilamythia help us in terms of dealing with overwhelm, in terms of reducing stress, in terms of finding our way back to who we are, what we might be meant to do here? How is it a self-exploration, self-discovery, and I don't want to say improvement because I think we're already, perfect, but it's more about being a more aligned version of ourselves. It's about being in a place where we feel truly empowered and comfortable and where we see ourselves from that best version um, side, not where we transform into a better version because we already are that version. And that brings me to this whole idea of what is it that we're looking for, and what is it that often happens in these sort of transformational retreats or the coaching sessions or whatever different products people are trying to sell, and that I am learning to be quite opposed to when it comes to self-development. And it's that whole idea of becoming someone better. And having to learn somebody else's ways to become better, having to learn other people's mechanisms to cope. Um, Thinking that right now we're not quite good enough, but if we do this or that or the other, then we can be happy with ourselves. To me, it's the wrong way around. To me, it's about removing all the belief systems that make us believe that we are unworthy, that make us believe that we are not good enough, that make us believe that we can't cope, we are powerless, and we are drowning under overwhelm. These patterns, these belief systems, it's about removing them because they're not ours. It's about letting go of them to find who's underneath of that pile of adopted behavior, thinking patterns, and so forth. So this is what this quest is about. It's about questioning not our worth or who we are. It's about questioning the patterns. It's about questioning maybe certain habits or belief systems that we adopted because they kind of get imposed on us by society, by the people around us, not for necessarily wanting to control us. Of course, there are people who do want to control us, but for the most part, it's because it was their belief system, it was their mechanism. And when it comes to the people who were there, who loved us, even if they've given us patterns that might not be serving us, it was with a good intention. It was out of love. It was to protect us. But all these things are there to be explored and to be questioned, not for their value, but for their usefulness or uselessness, or for their impact on our well-being. And so it's about finding ourselves. It's about exploring this childhood space, this castle, this kingdom, these patterns, these stories that we've been telling ourselves that are outdated, that don't serve us anymore, that are weighing us down, that are keeping us behind these walls of the castle. So it is all about metaphors. It is all about playing with images and words and visual concepts, because it's a place that we can easily relate to. It's a place that we can easily explore. It's much easier to be in that visual sentient space than to try and decode words and structures and sort of these more coded systems that we've had to learn to communicate and so forth. So going into the space of the kingdom, going into the space of the Gates of Lilamythia, it's about expansion. It's about realizing what is keeping us from just being okay with who we are, accepting ourselves fully, but also seeing the treasures, seeing all the value that is within us, but that we tend to not focus on, see, look at. And so it's an invitation to go and discover all of that. It's like a treasure hunt for all the good things that we've got. And when we find those things, when we find what we have, when we find our inner power to be able to control how we feel, what we can do, then we feel much more powerful. The outside world has less of an impact on us. And when we are in that aligned space, the outside world somehow magically adapts, changes. Our vision, our perception of who we are and what is going on out there is transformed. So that's what I'm trying to achieve with these Gates of Lilamythia. That's where our imagination, play, and creativity, the call to become creative with your mind, with your hands, with your creation of rituals that you make with the gyre, that you create based on play, that you can adopt to be your own. But that's for another video.